The lesson I'm going to show you today is a lesson called Landscapes, and this is an example of what the students are going to do. So it's a fairly simple project. This is a good one. Maybe if you don't have a lot of time to prepare to get like tons of supplies and everything out, this one's very basic. And it's one that the students can be pretty successful at without a lot of frustration. And kind of once they get going, it's just requires them to keep moving, and they won't get super frustrated, which can be nice to sometimes have a break, because sometimes the projects require a little bit more effort to be successful. So this is the project. So these ones right here, these are just on white construction paper. These ones I've just used crayons on. I'm going to show you how you can take it one step further by adding watercolors on top as well. And if that's the case, you're going to want to use a little bit thicker of a paper. The white construction paper tends to warp a little bit more. So you could use cardstock or just a heavier paper. It doesn't matter. But this one's fairly simple. They need a pencil, a marker, crayons, and then if you choose to do the final step, you could use some watercolors, paintbrush, and water. So in this lesson, they're learning what a landscape is. As you can see from these two examples, I have a landscape and a seascape. So in the lesson, they kind of learn mostly what a landscape is, but if they choose, they could do a seascape as well. The idea is just that it is a style of art where the main theme is actually nature. There's not, people and animals. It's really just the landscape. So in this one, they're going to want to start at the bottom of the paper. And this one kind of brings back the lesson that they had in second grade, I want to say, second or third grade, where they learn about foreground, middle ground, and background. And the idea is they've got to start in the front because everything else will be behind it. So they're kind of building from the bottom up. So this one, I would encourage them to just really, really be simple. Like, they don't need to add a lot of detail. So they're just kind of wanting to add a base layer of land and then just build on it. Build on it some rolling hills, mountains. If they want, they could add a tree or some bushes or flowers. But again, nothing really detailed here. This is just really a basic landscape. So just adding on those hills, mountains, whatever they want to add. So they're just creating layers in their landscape. Okay, so I've just done my basic sketch of the landscape. And one thing to remind them is in the lesson, they'll have looked at multiple pieces of art that are landscapes, and they can see how sometimes the landscapes are very realistic, very detailed, and sometimes they aren't as realistic. And that's where they can really experiment with shapes and colors that maybe wouldn't seem real, but is fine in this art. So after they've done their basic shapes, and again, reminding them, not a lot of detail, just kind of basic outlines, they're then going to go over those lines with a black marker. If you're going to do the watercolor on top, you're definitely going to want to use a Sharpie. If you're going to stick to the crayon and not do the watercolor, then any marker is fine. Okay, so what they're going to do next is they're going to take each section that they can see in this landscape, and they're going to fill each section in with a one color pattern. So like this one, we have each section that they've created using their lines is going to have a pattern, but they're going to only use one color per pattern. And this keeps it looking simple and a little bit too, if they use multiple colors, it gets a little too crazy looking. So one thing that they sometimes struggle with is kind of coming up with these ideas of patterns, different pattern ideas. Sometimes they're just kind of they draw a blank as to all those pattern ideas. So sometimes what I like to do before I have them start the pattern is on the whiteboard, I like to draw just some squares. They don't have to be perfect. So draw some squares on the whiteboard, just like this. My marker's running out here. And then have them help you think of some different patterns they could do. You know, polka dots, and maybe have students come up and help draw those patterns. And that will help them get started so that they don't, so they're not frustrated with trying to come up with the patterns. You know, polka dots, stripes, they could do something, waves. Really anything they think of is fine. Again, just single color patterns. And I always encourage them, no words, no letters, no logos. Some students really lean towards wanting to put those, you know, Minecraft or sports teams. They like to somehow put that in, and I really discourage it. So they can just keep thinking of ideas. But this kind of helps them get going. Another one is they could do kind of like bricks, stars, really anything they can think of. Again, just one color. They can even do, let's not gonna show up, you know, these little arches, rainbows, whatever they want. So I just find that useful. It gets them going and on the right track, and that way they kind of understand the concept. So when they start adding these patterns in, something to remind them is, again, it doesn't have to look realistic. They don't have to do the patterns in the colors that would necessarily actually go to the landscape. They don't have to use browns and greens for the land, blue for the sky. They can do whatever color they want. One more thought is, another way that they can do it is they could even use the same exact pattern in different colors throughout their landscape. So that's another way to look at it. It doesn't have to be a different pattern for every single section. It will just have a different look. So they can think of lots of ways to do it. So it helps to brainstorm with them in the beginning of where to start and how to go to make sure that they get the idea. And then they can just start adding the pattern. So this can take some time because they are filling in the whole paper with pattern. This is a great time to like put on music. I know a lot of times the students love to have music in the background. They can kind of work, and it just is kind of a relaxing project without being really stressful for them because they're just gonna fill this in with patterns. So now I've added all the patterns so they can do this. Again, single color patterns for each section. And then you can stop here. If that's all the time you have and they're done, that's fine. But then one more fun element to add is to add watercolors. So what I have them do with the watercolors is they're going to match as best that they can, because they might not have this many colors, the color watercolor to the crayon. They're going to do the same color in the section as they did the crayon. So here's the finished product. If you decide to add the watercolor, it just adds a little bit more color and really fills in the space. But again, if you choose to just do the patterns of the crayon, it ends up with the fine finished product as well. So it's really your preference and your time and what you have time for. And you may have some students that have time to do this and that want to do this, and some students that are happy with just the crayon. So again, this is one that this landscape project is one that the students are generally pretty successful. It's not super complicated. It's one that they can kind of just work without a lot of like overthinking. So it's a good one to just kind of relax and do with them.